the consumer sentiment because we've been looking at the consumer all night practically. But investor sentiment is more bullish than it was a couple of months ago. What are the investors feeling and what are the investors trying to accomplish in today's market? Because we see, uh, I feel like the market has plateaued. And so,
Hmm.
my personal opinion is that investors are much more targeted and precise with where they want to put their money. What do you think is going on in the investment
Excuse
world and
me.
how do they feel about this overall economy? I got some numbers on the screen
Yeah,
right now from that Goldman Sachs source that you sent me.
for sure. Well, thank you for putting that up there. Yeah, while reading that story, you know, one thing stuck out to me, which is what you just mentioned, stability, right? So, as we see the economy kind of slow down with inflation slowing, even though it's not great, 4% is better than 8% where we were a few years ago, right? So we
Mhm.
see inflation slowing, and then on top of that, we actually didn't see recessionary numbers this last quarter, and it's looking like we're not going to see that this upcoming quarter or fourth quarter. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But with that being said, I believe that uh, the market is not as volatile. So it might not have the same returns that it did a few years ago when the Dow went from, 18,000 or whatever it was, all the way up to, I believe, the historical high of 36, right? We're
Mhm.
probably not going to see that again until we get either different leadership or a stronger, different type of economy, that's based on either financial services or I believe that we need to have a little bit more of a service economy in manufacturing to be able to reach those numbers
Yes.
again.
I totally
But
agree. I think manufacturing will also be huge for price stability. I'll talk
it
about
would
that in
be
another episode.
huge because, we don't, that creates competition, and competition creates lower prices. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I believe that that's a huge part of this. I would love to see that happen again. But we're seeing our country move from a production side of things to financial services, and so we have a lot of experts with the quotations around it. But the truth is, the experts don't really know exactly what's happening. They just follow with what the economy is telling them. And the thing is, the economy never tells them in real time what's happening. It's always kind
Mhm.
of a wait and see. Let's look at last month's data. Let's compare it to this month's data. Where are we heading? Where are we going? I believe that the data that's come in from last quarter and last month and all of that information has put them at ease. I won't say that they're happy. I'm not going to say that they're going to have the greatest returns ever. This still probably isn't, the era of, you know 20% a year returns, where some people previously were getting those 20% a year returns through either real estate or the stock market. That's not going to happen. But I think for the average person, they're happy with a 5 or 6 or 7% capitalization rate, where they're going to, make their money and actually be able to stave off inflation, even if it's by a few percentage points. And that's putting a lot of investors at ease,
One of the things
myself
that is,
included.
yeah, yeah. Well, I would say that one of the things that is very unique in this situation is we could see with a better economy, the stock market always tumble, which sounds crazy and it sounds hard to believe. But if the bond rate goes up, it went past 5%. I
Yeah.
believe it was about a month ago. I think the number was 5.8 the other day. If the bond yield continues to grow and inflation continues to go down, you're going to see a lot of people trying to buy
Mhm.
bonds, be able to make that extra 3 or 4 safe percentage points, opposed
Yeah.
to the 7 or 8 aggressively in the market, which may or may not happen depending on stability and pricing and unemployment. So there's so many factors going on there. I thought that the bond market was a unique example of where the investors are. And then,
Yeah.
I totally think that you're correct in saying that, yeah, manufacturing, if that would be able to come back, I think that would truly spark the beginning of something special in this country because, again, not only would we have competition amongst ourselves, but also globally speaking. We know that China makes like 90% of pharmaceuticals for the United States. And, if we make them mad or if we do something they don't like, they can always
Yeah,
kind of hold us captive to that in a way. So,
yeah.
just keeping that in mind, I think that manufacturing we really need to look at as a country, regardless of who's in office. I'm so tired of the Republican and Democrat nonsense. It should be an
Yeah.
American issue. So it'll be interesting to
Well,
see what happens.
and just to add on an interesting perspective into what I believe is ultimately going to happen. We see China with an aging population. A lot of them are aging out of the workforce or military service. So China, appears to us as this big bad foe right now. And right now is probably their opportunity to make a name for themselves on the global stage. But as their population declines, so is their economy, and so is their military, and so is every other aspect that makes China continue to grow. And so I believe that American manufacturing needs to take place to be able to surpass China once again. But I also believe that we need to be strategic with our partners in India because India is continuing to have a booming population. I believe they're on track to pass China if they haven't
Yeah,
already at
in
some
a
point
couple of years.
within this next decade. And they're going to have a young workforce, and we're going to need to start being friends with them if we don't want to see history repeat itself with China. We want to be able to have our strategic partners there in India not only have a healthy economy, but also if America doesn't want to manufacture, if American workers are too lazy, not American workers, American companies, if we're too lazy to innovate and manufacture, we are going to have to outsource somewhere other than China here in the near future. I think India is a prime candidate for that. So if you're an investor, if you're starting to hear murmurings about India and the potential that they have on the world stage, not only economically but militarily in the future, I do believe that will be the case, and they're going to be a good country to keep your eye on if you're an investor, a venture capitalist or otherwise that wants to make a dent. So I think that's a
Yeah.
great opportunity.